What is up, everyone, and welcome back to Ask the Producer series. Today we are going through a question that we have gotten internally quite a lot, but also I think a couple of you asked it out there. Now we're gonna check how to destroy your music in a good way. So we're gonna explore that concept, and I'm gonna give you some pointers on how to mix it and how to really accomplish that. So let's jump into the studio and see what we can do. Now that we're in the studio, I am going to start off with just showing off something extremely simple, and I know that all of you out there has probably done it. So I'm just gonna load in a instrumental from, let's say, Goat. Now this is a typical trick. All of you know we have any type of distortion will destroy your music, but the problem is here that some distortions are not all distortions are made equally. So let's start off with the Bitcrusher, which really what it does, it truncates your entire audio so it sounds, well, crushed. So let's hear it. What you notice here is that there's a lot of other sounds that are coming in and coming through here. Now, how to adjust this? So if you lower the bit rate, you're gonna hear more and more noise, which in and of itself sounds pretty cool. There's also a level of downsampling. So if we pull this back up to like 9, so as you can see, like at 60, you're losing a lot of the details. You're basically just hearing what the bass and the kicks are doing. There's some elements of that hi-hat also coming through. But if you are noticing that you have a distortion that is very harsh on the hearing, let's say we'll jump into Crusher, for example. And then or even the Juicy Distortion has that element as well. Also make sure that tone is all the way up so you get that full range of distortion. So here, what you can do to be a little bit smart about this is that distortion adds a lot of harmonics to your sound. So where are us humans the most sensitive? Well, it's usually around this area. So around 2 to 6K. So if you grab the EQ, make it quite wide, and let's listen to what happens when I pull this area down. So as you can see, you can notice that it's a lot less harsh. So here, and that's just one way of doing it. But this is, I think, is the key learning here of finding ways to distort your audio, make it sound rough and rough and raggedy, but without making it so harsh on the ears that it's hard to listen to. Also, that it doesn't fight with your vocals or other lead elements. So that is number one. However, now I want to show you something really cool that I figured out recently on the pitch shifter. Now, I wouldn't normally consider pitch shifting to be like the main thing to make your sound lo-fi or whatnot. I'm like thinking generally like, oh yeah, I want to shift the pitch. But listen to what the pitch shifter does when you just change the format of your track. So here we're getting like a weird kind of underground, underwater kind of sound here going forward. We can also change the pitch. Just the problem is when you're changing the pitch here, right, is that you're, well, changing the pitch. So but if you go down to 12, open the mix a little bit, and here already you're getting a very strange kind of warbly underwater kind of sound. And if you want to expand on it, vocal doubler is a great one because you add more stereo field. And this works really well for song starters. So, oh, whoops, let's keep the track. Let's find a song starter. Perfect example. So let's pull this in. So going from what we had, this is the original. to adding the tracks, adding the effects back in. And here, like what I can hear, for example, is that area that gets a little bit too busy, too harsh. Pull that down again. And with and without, we'll hear first without. So a lot of your articulations are up there. So if you're gonna do a vocal on top of this beat, and this is really how to do creative sampling as well, make sure that you pull that area down just enough for your vocals to come through. Now, the final and, in my opinion, most amazing trick, really what you want to think about when it comes to destroying your tracks, and you can do this in multiple different ways. The new mastering presets that you can find here in the export currently, cassette here. This one versus the original. How I made that one specifically is how to think about a cassette. So a cassette has a tendency to distort if you drive it a little bit too hard. So we're gonna add just a distortion first. But also what cassettes also have is a filter on top of there, because you're not getting the full range of frequencies in a cassette tape naturally. So now I'm not saying that cassette tapes can only represent 4,000 hertz, but if you want to kind of get that effect of it, you want to drive it a little bit harder. What you can do is give yourself like more of a nicer kind of curve instead of like 48 dB, like that's like very, very harsh kind of a brick wall cut, whereas 24 and 12 gives a little bit of a nicer kind of ramp here on the low end and high end. So let's listen to the difference. And if we just switch between them, you'll hear the difference. So you're cutting out a lot harder on the high end when you're sending it to 48 versus 24. So I would set it to somewhere around 4 hertz, 4,000 hertz with the 24 on, and then low cut, whatever feels right. So I'm gonna, see, that's too much. 150 is good enough. Also, what cassettes also have, which I just love, is this tape wobble thing that what it comes from usually is faulty drivers in the cassette tapes. So give me 1 second. Luckily, I have one right here, a cassette player. Now to open this up, let's see if we can do that here. You can see there are 2 motors that are spinning the cassette. And when those motors deteriorate over time, they do have this like flutter wobble kind of thing because it's not playing at a constant speed. So getting back to it, now that we have the tape wobble added, I am going to show instead on this track, because I noticed that it has a little bit of an issue, the other one that we're using. So having goat on here, let's listen to it before. Adding the filter. Now we're gonna add the tape wobble. So if we start off with the wow here, we have basically a slow modulation in pitch where you're going to hear a lot of it's going to make you a little bit dizzy. Really weird, I know, but it really adds a lot of character to these kind of cassette emulating effects. So usually I would just keep it like pretty low. And then for flutter, it's more of so let's keep that one down. Let's add a lot of flutter depth so you can hear what it does. So having something like that with the wow as well gives a kind of weird modulation thing that adds more character to your sample. And you can change the rates here however you want, which will just change how fast these modulations happen. Now, next up, I would probably add something along the lines of a distortion. The juicy distortion works really well for this. Keep your mix up as you're sending this. Just remove the low cut, remove the tone because you don't want that to affect the sound, and set your distortion levels. So now I just wanted to hit like those peaks. And the problem with that is that it gets a little bit sporadic on when the distortion hits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a compressor first, pull the threshold down, slow attack, slow, all right, fast attack, fast release. So it just really attacks all of those first. Now we can pull the mix down a little bit. And finally, like I said before, adding the visual EQ to just pull down that 4K bump a little bit, just so it doesn't get in the way of your vocals. For example, here should be good. I'm going to show what each and every one of these does. So we're going to start off with the original. This is what it sounds like. Flutter. Tape wobble. Compressor. Distortion. So now if we were to add something along the lines of like oh, this might actually work really well with this. Hang on. So if we were to compare this beat without the effects versus with, so it's just to add a little bit more character, a little more dirt to your samples, to change them up a little bit and make them your own. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. There's a lot of things that you can do to deteriorate and like kind of destroy your music, but in a nice way. Here are a couple of tips. So for example, making it have a little bit of modulation using the tape wobble, cutting out that 4K bump for just to make sure that you're not kind of getting in the way of your vocals, but not also exhausting your listeners as well. And finally, use distortion, but be sparse with it. Don't overdo it. I mean, there's definitely some genres out there that really like distortion, and totally fine with that. But when you're doing it in kind of a general way where you're going to add drums and other stuff later, be mindful of the distortion so it doesn't really cut through and hurt your listeners' ears. But with all of that said, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and subscribe. Also, most of you people watching right now, you haven't subscribed yet, so please do that. Give this video a like, and we'll see you in the next one.